Hi guys, thank you all for tuning in and welcome back to Sewing Clara. Today we're gonna make our first steps with a sewing machine. This video is perfect for anyone who just started their sewing journey, so if you just got your sewing machine and you are about to make your first stitches, then this video is perfect for you. I do recommend watching my course Introduction to Sewing Machine first. I explained in that course in general how a sewing machine works. You can learn how to do basic maintenance, and you can also learn about basic sewing feet and about sewing machine needles and also about faulty stitches and how to fix them. So if you haven't watched that course yet, I highly suggest you would start with that course and then you can return to this video. And if you already know all that stuff, we can start. My sewing machine has this hard cover, so I'm just gonna lift it. And in the side pocket there is the pedal, and I have here also the cord for the electric socket. So I'm gonna plug the machine in first. Since the distance between my sewing machine and access to electricity is very short, I personally like to keep my cable partially rolled together, and I'm also using a cable binder because that way I don't end up with a cable salad here in the back. So I'm gonna plug the cable into the sewing machine and then to the socket here in the back, and now I can turn the machine on with the power button that I have here on the side. Next, I will plug into my sewing machine the pedal. But before I do that, there are a few things I wanted to tell you about the sewing machine pedal. So first things first, the pedal works similarly to an accelerator in a car. So when you apply more pressure, you'll be sewing faster. When you apply only very little pressure, you'll be sewing rather smaller. So you regulate the speed of your sewing with this tool. My sewing machine has also certain speed settings. I have 3 levels, low, medium and high. And whenever I plug in the pedal, let's say I have the medium settings, even if I would step fully on the pedal, it would sew maximally medium fast. But that's not the case with every sewing machine. So this is your tool to regulate the speed. So it's really important to practice that so that you develop a really good feel for your sewing machine pedal. Again, very similar to the accelerator in a car. Another thing I wanted to tell you is that this sewing machine pedal has a really great feature. It has 2 non-slippery strips here, which means that even if I would use the pedal on a really slippery surface, the pedal would stay in place. However, I had other sewing machines that would not have this feature, and the back of the pedal was really smooth, and sometimes it kind of kept sliding away from me, and that was very annoying. So if that's the case with your sewing machine pedal, if you don't have these non-slippery strips, you can either find somewhere some rubbery material, cut out 2 strips and glue them to the side, or like a really sticky patent leather, or simply grab 2 or 3 rubber bands and wrap them around it, and that will do the trick. The rubber bands are admittedly not ideal, but at least until you find some great material for the back, it's gonna help you. So now that I told you all these things, I can plug the pedal in. The other things that I'm gonna tell you might kind of sound pretty obvious, but I still find it really important to mention. I like having a drink close by when I'm working on my sewing projects, because otherwise I'll forget to drink, I will be caught up in sewing and I'll be dehydrated. So make sure you always have close by something to drink, but also make sure that it can't get tangled into your cables, so that if you move the machine so that you can't accidentally spill your drink. This might sound really super obvious, but trust me, I learned the hard way. I personally like keeping my drink a little bit behind the machine, away from the cables, so that it can't get caught, or I put it on my windowsill and then it's 100% safe. Same goes for my box of pins. There are people who have like a pincushion, but I really like using this simple box. And you don't want to put it anywhere where the cable could accidentally throw it to the ground, because then all the pins would be spilling on the floor and it's just super annoying. So I'm also again putting the pins a little bit further or on the other side, away from the cables, but also away from the fabric, because you have to keep in mind that on the left side will be your piece that you're working on, and that would also throw the pins on the ground. This very close to the machine, again a little bit away from the cables, is for me a really nice place. I still have them close by, that's where I like to keep them. But you have to try for yourself what works for you, because in my opinion there are so many things that might work differently for different people. And before you start doing anything, make sure you have really good settings of your chair. When you sit at your desk where you have your sewing machine, you want to have a nice angle of your arms. So that should be something about 90 degrees plus minus. Because that way you can sit really relaxed, you can sit straight without hunching, but also without the need to lift your arms. That would be detrimental for your neck and for your back. So if I would put my chair way lower and I would have to lift my arms, my shoulders would end up hurting after several hours of sewing, and probably also my neck, which could result in severe headache. Just not a good thing to do. And same goes for hunching. So if my chair would be much higher and I would be hunching over my sewing machine, I would round my back, I would strain my neck muscles, could also end up in some back pain and neck pain and headache, and you definitely want to avoid that. Again, probably sounds very obvious, but I thought I'm gonna mention that. Alright, so these are all the steps that I do first every single time when I prepare for sewing. So after everything has been plugged in and the machine has been turned on, I always like making sure that I have all the things close by that I'll need for my sewing project. So right now I have here my pins, and I also like keeping close by my scissors. So I have here these bigger scissors and the smaller scissors. So next you will have to thread your sewing machine and to wind your bobbin, and that has been all explained in the course Introduction to Sewing Machine, so I'm not gonna go into any details. So whenever you're selecting a certain color of thread for your sewing project, it can be a contrast color or a matching color, that's always up to you. Once that's been done, you have to select proper sewing foot and the correct sewing machine needle. Again, something that's been explained in the course Introduction to Sewing Machine, so we will not discuss the details, but I have here an example. So I have here a piece of denim, which is a thick denim. So for that I would use the zigzag sewing foot, because I would sew this with a straight stitch, and the machine even suggests that I should use the zigzag sewing foot, and I would have to switch to a denim needle. And once I made sure that the machine is equipped accordingly, I can lift the sewing foot and remove the protective piece of cloth that I like keeping inside, and I would be ready to go and to make my first stitches. One last thing, before you start sewing, I personally always like lowering the needle so that it would hold the fabric securely before I make my first stitch. And you can do that in two different ways. Either your sewing machine has the option to lower or lift the needle. So I have a button for that. So if I would push it, the needle would simply go down, and if I would push it again, it would go up. If your sewing machine doesn't have that option, you can always do it with this wheel on the side. You always have to turn the wheel only towards yourself. So when you turn the wheel towards you, the needle will sink in, and if you want to lift it, you have to turn it further towards you, and the needle will go all the way back up again. Lowering the needle helps me to make sure that I will know where the very first stitch will start. That's especially helpful either when you're just starting out or when you're working with slippery fabrics. And that is gonna be it for this video. So thank you all so much for watching, and happy sewing!